It's nuts. Here is, just take a look at this because this is a big deal, I think. We mentioned this earlier with Brandon. This is the image of the pro-life ad. I don't call it pro-life. It's really more of an anti-abortion ad in a 2006 South Bend newspaper. So we're talking about 14 years ago. And this, if you could just zoom in a little bit, the Supreme Court's 1973 Roe v. Wade decision legalized abortion for any reason. Now, after more than 32 years under Roe, more than 47 million unborn children have been aborted. The majority of those abortions were performed for social reasons. I guess that's presumably like, I don't know what social reasons means. Yet poll after poll continues to show an increasing majority of Americans are opposed to abortion as a method of birth control. I think that, I don't think that people use it as a method of birth control per se in the way that they would use condoms. I think they use it as it's a decision. They don't want to have a child. I mean, I guess maybe you could characterize it that way. But the fact is the majority of Americans also believe a woman has a right to choose to have an abortion. In 2000, the Supreme Court ruled that Roe v. Wade allowed and protected the brutal partial birth abortion procedure, which of course is not an actual real thing. There is no partial birth abortion, a practice opposed by over 70% of Americans. It's time to put an end to the barbaric legacy of Roe v. Wade and restore laws that protect the lives of unborn children. And her name is one of those signatures on the left there. And so she has publicly weighed in on a case that is sure on some form or another to appear in front of the Supreme Court. And I think this has really scared some of the Republicans in there, because we've got a bunch of races that are super, super close. And I think, there is a percentage of Republican voters who don't want abortion to be illegal. I don't know how big it is, but it doesn't have to be very big when you're talking about these very, very close races in these, increasingly purple states.
Yeah. And like, I think one of the more interesting things about like the abortion debate is like more and more I view it as like less like pro-life people versus pro-choice people, and more like ideologues versus people who acknowledge that they're living in a country with other people. Like where it's like, because most people, like most people who would even like identify as pro-life, the polls show that it's like, if you phrase the question differently, right? Like rather than like, are you for or against abortion? Like, do you think a person should be able to have an abortion if they need one? Then even a lot of pro-life people will say, yeah,
including Catholics.
Yeah. Including Catholics. And like, so yeah, like it's definitely an issue that, benefits right-wing ideologues to stack the court on it. And it's always going to benefit, a more reasonable stance to let people vote on it. Right. Like it's,
We have races in Iowa, Maine, North Carolina, Montana, Georgia, both seats, South Carolina, Kansas, Alabama, Colorado, Arizona, and Michigan. These are very close races. And this is a suddenly, right? I mean, these races have been more or less fixed insofar as like the issue sets, right? There's no, it's like the relationship with Trump and it is about, I think, the challengers getting out the question of healthcare. They're all running on healthcare. I think that is another big, very salient issue. This is one that comes in, and there's no one, I think, who's voting for a Republican or who's voting for a Democrat, let's say, who doesn't think that vote is going to translate into a protection of the right to abortion, right? However, there are Republicans who have had the ability to ignore, because they vote Republican, to ignore the question of abortion. This makes it very difficult for them to do so because now there is an explicit indication of where she stands on this. And there's a reason why they hide the football, as it were, on this, even when they have the votes, is because they don't want to get rid of this pretense of like, there's a litmus test on that side. And they don't, Susan Collins, this is going to make it very, very hard for them to have the vote before the election. Like, and we can't tell, right? But when Mitch McConnell starts to sort of like back off the idea of having the vote before the election, that indicates to me that he doesn't have the votes. If he has the votes, he's going to do it. He's going to get this through. And it'll be interesting to see if these hearings actually go forward. They're scheduled for the 12th, I guess. And, right now, at least one member of the Judiciary Committee, a Republican, has coronavirus. Who knows? Maybe it's more. She may have been, she's tested negative, but we don't know. We're only a day out from, we're only 2 days out from, we're less than 2 full days out from when Hope Hicks tested positive, and 12 hours out from when Donald Trump tested positive. I think he got tested positive at 12 o'clock at night last night, right? So who knows? I mean, we're just weird territory here.
Right. I mean, like, would they, like, I would usually, under normal circumstances, take it for granted that if enough people contracted it, they would have to postpone. But it's like, now I feel like you can't even take that for granted. Like,
right.
they might just say we're not quarantining,